This short subject was originally aired on April 30th, 1958, as a segment of the Disneyland TV episode An Adventure in Art.
The best advice I have ever given to students who have studied under me has been just this. Educate yourself. Do not let me educate you. I'm reading from Robert Henry in response to a question often asked in letters from art students. However they put it, it always boils down to this. Students become confused by honest admiration for one school of painting mixed with recognition of the success and popularity of another style, along with advice to follow a still different approach. Frequently, a student will ask which one he should imitate. Robert Henry would advise, don't imitate anyone. He says, one of the great difficulties of an art student is to decide between his own natural impressions and what he thinks should be his impressions. And at another page, go forward with what you have to say, expressing things as you see them. Time after time in his art spirit, Henry says, be yourself. Here at the studio, we have many artists who have achieved national reputation as painters, in addition to their accomplishments in the field of animation. These men know the value of Henry's advice to be yourself. I'd like you to meet 4 of them and see how they put this rule into practice. Here is Marc Davis. He is one of our top-flight character animators.
I am working on our feature-length cartoon, Sleeping Beauty. These are drawings of the leading character, Princess Aurora. Now, back at the time when we were starting to animate Sleeping Beauty, one of my duties as a supervising animator was to determine how the princess would be drawn. This involved combining the best features and suggestions of the many artists who worked on this character. Now, making an animated film is a cooperative effort. Each artist must be prepared to modify his own pet ideas in order to achieve the best possible solution to the problem. No one has things entirely his own way, but in the end, the result is better than any one of us could have achieved alone. This was not a simple matter of picking out the best-looking drawing. The object was to arrive at the drawing that would look best in motion.
They never want me to meet anyone. But you know something? I fooled them. I have met someone. Well, he's tall and handsome and so romantic. Oh, we walk together and talk together. And just before we say goodbye, he takes me in his arms. And then I wake up.
The appearance of the princess, as finally agreed upon, was worked out on a model sheet which all of the artists followed in their animation. This is Joshua Meador. He is a supervising effects animator here at the studio. He employed an unusual technique for animating the magic fairy dust, which plays such an important part in Sleeping Beauty.
This fully rendered drawing represents one of the scenes in Sleeping Beauty. I am now adding the fairy dust, which the 3 fairies use all through the picture to perform their magic.
Eyvind Earle. He created the unique styling and overall appearance of our production, Sleeping Beauty.
In searching for a style for a cartoon feature, many considerations are necessary. For one thing, it must be more than merely pleasing to the eye. The backgrounds must harmonize with the animated characters, as well as fit the mood of the story and the music. Sleeping Beauty is a fairy tale that is supposed to have taken place long, long ago. So we did a great amount of research into medieval painting and architecture before we arrived at the right styling for this picture.
This is Walt Peregoy, who is an artist with a very distinctive style of his own, which is entirely different from Eyvind's.
But I had to forego my normal manner of painting, because all the scenes of an animated film must be kept consistent in appearance. So like all the other background artists, I looked to Eyvind to help me keep my background paintings in line with the established style of the picture.
This entire operation puts one in mind of a symphony orchestra, where men who are good enough to be soloists in their own right are thinking only of the effect they are producing on the whole. This sort of deferring to what is most important in achieving a common goal affects every individual in the studio while he is at work. But in his leisure time, he can be himself. No longer a member of a group, but a virtuoso, an individualist, suiting only himself. Here now, on a Saturday, our 4 artists take a busman's holiday. On this particular day, the subject that attracts their interest is a fine old live oak. You'll notice that even in the operation of setting up, there is an individual approach. Let's listen to the voice of each artist as he explains what is in his mind as we see him paint his picture. First, Walt Peregoy.
The thing that impresses me most is that this tree is a marvelous piece of engineering. It's a structure, and I'm going to try to reproduce it graphically. Strong, straight inclines will build architectural patterns for me. I can see the tree building itself on my board like a skyscraper. I'm even more reminded of a skyscraper when I study the lower horizontal branches. They are very much like steel girders, designed for tremendous stress and strain. Only a strong geometric interpretation can do justice to this terrific strength. Now, while I look at this tree as architecture, the others see it differently. For instance, Josh Meador.
The ancient Druids believed that trees were inhabited by spirits. Now, I'm no Druid, but I can see how they could have gotten the idea. This tree is certainly a living thing, full of personality. I feel that I've got to work mighty fast if I want to capture my first impression of all this tremendous vitality and life. So, I'm applying these blocking in strokes with my biggest brush. And I'm using a very thin mixture of oil paint and lighter fluid. I use lighter fluid because it dries fast. I see this tree as a living personality, but no doubt Eyvind Earle sees it from an entirely different point of view.
Yes, I do. I see in this tree all the richness and variety that can be found in nature. I am not going to paint the whole tree. What I'm looking for is contained in the trunk as much as in any part of this tree. I intend to make a very detailed study of the tree trunk. In fact, you might call it a portrait of a tree trunk. I am working with casein, a watercolor type of paint. I find this medium ideal for working in fine detail. Of course, the first step is pretty rough. What I'm delineating here are the outside lines of the trunk. This will establish the silhouette, or outside shape of what I am painting. While I am primarily interested in the trunk, undoubtedly Marc Davis is interested in other aspects of this tree.
That's right. There are several things that interest me in this oak tree. First, I like its growth pattern and its bony structure. It seems to burst right out of the ground. I'm trying to suggest this explosive force with an arrangement of lines that reach upward and outward. I'm doing this preliminary drawing with charcoal, and I'm working on light gray paper. Speaking of working methods, Josh is now at a point of doing something that's kind of interesting.
Here I've gotten to the point where I have roughed in the main areas of the tree. And now I'm going to leave off using my brushes. From here on in, I'm going to apply the paint with one of my palette knives. These knives are generally used for scraping paint off the palette, but I think they're fine for applying the paint to the canvas. Working this way, I don't mix the colors thoroughly on the palette, but let them mingle as I spread them on the canvas. It is my way of suggesting movement. Careful, precise mixing of colors would kill all the life in it for me. I consider putting in the background very important. You see, I can't think of painting this old tree without putting him in his proper surroundings, the life and landscape that he dominates.
Another thing that is interesting to me about this tree is its three-dimensional quality. To bring this out, I'm painting these branches in black. The importance of this dimensional problem influenced the selection of the medium I chose to work in. I am using the gray paper background as a middle value. This permits me to use black to make some of the branches appear to recede. Later on, you will see how I use white to make other branches seem to come forward. Of course, I can't put in those branches until I finish the rest of these distant ones.
Here now, I've established the rough outline and the form of my tree trunks. And now I'm refining the form. I'm establishing directional lines that give movement and added form, as well as the beginning of texture. Before I'm through, I mean to capture the texture of this tree trunk, the infinite detail within detail, the bark like a rich filigree, like ancient embroidered tapestries.
In this stage of the operation, I am smoothing in my color areas with a palette knife. I am still sticking very closely to my original conception. I still look at my tree from an architectural standpoint. As I fill these areas in, I have to be very careful to keep it simple. It would ruin my basic design if I were to go in for too much ornamentation.
Now my picture is nearing completion. I'm putting in the white, which you may recall is intended to make certain areas come forward. However, the mere ability to move elements either forward or backward in the picture plane is not enough. There must be good design. Consequently, I have been very selective about which branches I have chosen to make important, or subdue, or eliminate entirely. What I'm trying to do is to take what nature has put before me and reorganize it into its most decorative aspect.
Of course, each one of us is actually doing that, but in a different manner. And now I'm at the point I enjoy the most, that of creating on the surface of my painting, to the ultimate of my capacity, the rich, gnarled, worm-eaten, lichen-covered surface of the twisted, massive trunk.
As the four artists finish their pictures, it is interesting to see how very differently they turn out, even though they were all painting the same tree. Now, each of these artists is right according to his own ideas. What each one has painted is not just the external appearance of a tree, but his own personal response to what the tree represents. In short, the whole idea of a tree. For in his book, Robert Henry has rightly said, "The great painter has something to say. He does not paint men, landscapes, or furniture, but an idea."